Today on the podcast, I have fashion entrepreneur and designer Miss Marnie Goding, co-founder of Elk, the label, a Melbourne-based brand, actually, ironically, a Preston-based brand, which we both had a quick chat about. I grew up in Preston and so did Marnie, so it's awesome. Elk's been around since 2004, and I'm really honoured to have Marnie on the show today talking about fashion, design, sustainability, supply chains and all of that stuff and transparency. So welcome to the show, Marnie.
Thanks for having me.
Your fashion journey is a fascinating one. As I was doing my research, and we just literally spoke 2 minutes ago about, you started the brand in 2004, and you were kind of a bit of a pioneer in terms of, starting a brand that was sustainable and ethical from the get-go. I can't imagine how difficult that would have been back in 2004, where sustainability and supply chains and all of that sort of stuff wasn't really heard of. So tell me, how did you embark on this journey when you originally started?
Well, I feel like as we celebrate 20 years next year for Elk, that we've lived a lifetime in terms of business, particularly small business in Australia. Just to preface the conversation, I'm actually a co-founder. My husband and I started the business together, as I said, nearly 20 years ago. And so he is as much by my side in the journey that we've had, and I get the gigs to be the spokesperson. He doesn't love this type of thing, so due credit where credit's due. I think in the beginning we didn't necessarily start off to create a fully fledged fashion brand that we've become today. I think certainly our journey started with a desire to work together. We met very young and have both come from families that have run small businesses. So I think innately we always knew that we'd do our own thing and, love the idea of working together. My background actually started in a very, very different space. Like so many young people, deciding when you're 17 what you're going to do for the rest of your life often starts off with something that ends up in a completely different space. And my background is I did a degree in cooking and marketing, and I went to RMIT and had this fantastic experience, and certainly went down that path for many years. But whilst I was doing that and learning about running business and, I think, garnering skills that have certainly stood the test of time and helped the business I am in today, that desire to always work together saw Adam and I kick off with Elk prior to 2004, but certainly I jumped into his business. He's a fine jeweller.
Okay.
And he was doing...
both of you have completely different backgrounds, like sort of a little bit, I guess Adam probably a little bit more in design in terms of being a fine jewellery maker, but yourself in cooking and marketing is like kind of completely
different. But I think fundamentals of business are the same. It doesn't matter what you're doing.
Exactly.
And I think, Adam was a very successful jeweller, and he had his own studio in Preston, and very creative, very clever craftsman and tradesperson. And I think when I joined the business, I saw an opportunity at the time, which you have to remember back that the world was a pretty different place then. It was pretty much the internet wasn't even really a thing.
No.
To consider in their operations. And I jumped into the business with him to help out initially, and then saw an opportunity there where there was a need or an opportunity for him to find his customers coming back more regularly. When you're a fine jeweler, the only reason you have a customer come to you is because they've got a special occasion or a celebration that would require something bespoke to be made, and that would mean you only be coming back once every sort of 10 years. So very quickly we noticed a gap in the market and started hand-making lower price point jewellery and selling it through his little studio, which he was quite horrified about at the time. A very fine tradesman with very high quality skills, and he was like bashing away in the back room trying to make stuff, and it was selling, and he very quickly had to change his opinion on, that divide between commercial opportunity and, seeing that there was a market out there for customers that could come back, month after month because they had, a party to wear something to for an event, or they, needed a gift. And I think that proved to him that there was an opportunity there. And so, going back to your question around the foundations of an ethical and sustainable business, I think certainly that term of sustainability was not, something that even entered into the vernacular. But we both had come from backgrounds where we had worked for others, and we had seen what it was like to work in a workplace that wasn't that fantastic. And so, and just also how important the relationships with suppliers were. So, without suppliers, we don't have product, and without product, we don't have a business. And so we set about in the very beginning to make sure that we were closely aligned with our supply chain, and that we had a good understanding of who was providing us with our materials or third-party services that we couldn't do in-house. And that foundation was something that set us apart at the time, and I think has remained very core to our values as we've got to this point 20 plus years down the track. The sustainable journey, I think, came not too long after, and it in itself is actually quite a good story about how we really sort of changed the direction of what we were doing, the focus of, the attention that we paid to that supply chain. But yeah, I think that, ethics is something that makes us, feel proud of a business that we've created and the opportunities that we've created for others. And really, we can sleep well at night knowing that, we are doing all we can to be sure that work and opportunities within that supply chain are consistent, safe and fair.
And I'm assuming it aligns with your own personal morals and values, so, and I think that's important as well as a business, as a whole business, because like you guys have gone to the levels where you can jump on your website and people can actually see your report, your annual report, which is great, and you're very transparent, which is, I know a lot of businesses, particularly in fashion, are starting to kind of make that transition where they're becoming a little bit transferable, and people can jump online and even follow the garment and the garment's journey on how it was made. But you guys have been doing this for a little bit longer. So I'm going to take you back a little bit, going back to the start of your journey with your husband Adam. So you started creating jewelry first, so more or less costume jewelry, I'm assuming, yeah. And then, so how did that transition into then clothing?
So we started making the product, which was a very fine handmade silver product, and all based on botanical designs, which we'd called seedlings. That was the collection name. And we're hand making that ourselves, of thousands and thousands of pieces. And we, realised early on that we couldn't, as much as you want to be when you're a small business and an entrepreneur, you want to be able to do everything, but you just can't. So we brought on a salesperson who was pivotal in actually allowing us to realise the opportunity in the market at the time, and she took samples of that product and went out on the road and sold them into independent boutiques, so fashion boutiques and some lifestyle boutiques. And very quickly that product gained traction, and very quickly the demand for different product and different materials was apparent. And so we started to travel, and we travelled overseas to find stones or to find materials that we could use for our product that was still handmaking in Melbourne at the time. And, as you travel, you open your eyes and you open your mind to new opportunities, and you meet new vendors. And, I think that in that early period, we were, we had nothing to lose. We were starting at zero. We had nothing to lose from there. So I think that we had a very experimental, very excited, probably naive approach to trying new things. And, we're in that lovely phase of, just why not? Let's give it a go. And I think that as we travelled and we met new people, we sort of, started expanding our product lines from, that simplistic silver product to product that was using mixed materials. And then we started to contract product designs to other makers who were then making things out of sustainable plantation timber and other materials. And that was just a snowball into, we then met this incredible company who were actually based in Paris, but had a Chinese factory, and they were making these beautiful leather goods. And so we started designing leather goods, and they made those for us. And we had sort of the Midas touch in the beginning. Whatever we made, we sold. And, that fueled that fire, inquisitiveness and experimentation that, as an entrepreneur, I think once you learn something, you just don't ever want to stop learning.
No. And I think, going back in 2004, just from memory, I think when Elk actually came out, the products were so unique and classic that they kind of appealed to every age group, really. So I would see, I was a hairdresser back then, so I would see the product on an older woman and a younger woman, and it would look stunning, It'd be like, oh, and soon you become to recognize, oh, that must be an Elk piece, that must be an Elk piece, So it was interesting, and I think that was the uniqueness of your label at the time, from my memory, was the fact that anyone could wear it and it looked fantastic, and it was different. It was simple. There was a bit of a minimal aesthetic to it. It was a little bit different, and it stood out without standing out too much. It was quite unique in itself. Well, your designs were quite unique in themselves. So then it slowly kind of transitioned into. So what was your first fashion garment that you created?
I look back on that and quite comical relief, really, that it's not we've changed direction since then. Look, I think just to address your earlier comment, actually I don't have a design background, and so I think that actually I had no rules to follow,
which is better.
Correct. I think that in some ways I've had to learn on the job, and there's been things which actually directly relate to your comment about or question about what the first garment was. They had absolutely no idea what I was doing. And so on one hand, you have this total creative freedom. There's no charter to follow, or there's no textbook that I had to abide by. And certainly also not coming from, I have very good business experience and a good background in marketing and an understanding of how to run a small business. But certainly from a design point of view, construction, really the only direction I had was from Adam and his very clever ability to be able to construct pretty much anything he puts his mind to. And so we always had product that was constructed well and made from quality materials, because that was important to us. But I had no design, no design guidance. And I think that level of curiosity then, led us from leather goods into niched product. So early on the days of Elk, we actually made homewares, and we aligned ourselves with manufacturers here in Melbourne. And so actually our first, product really was knitwear. That was where we started.
Oh, really?
And then pretty quickly that pivoted to apparel. And I think a lot of that came from demand. And that's the wonderful thing about small business. Again, you can pivot and you can meet demand. We're much more nimble than we now, certainly.
I agree.
And the stores that we're selling into were some incredible independent retailers, and they were asking us for product. We were creating our photo shoots. We'd beg, borrow, and steal from anyone that we knew to borrow product to shoot with. And the questions kept coming from the wholesalers saying, well, where did you get that dress from, or where did that T-shirt come from? We want something with an Elk print on it, or we want something with your label on it, because our customers are asking for it. So I think that's a beautiful place to come from when you're running business, when you're not, you've got some idea of a guaranteed sale before you even start. That was encouraging, but we certainly didn't know at the time how big that could be. And the first garments that we did make were terrible. We had employed a few staff at the time, so we had gone from a team of 2 to probably a team of about 6. And my colleague and I, she is incredible, she still works for us now, a very long time down the road, we were designing things and we had no idea what we're doing, and we had people doing the pattern making for us, and absolutely must have just been thinking it was the funniest thing they'd ever seen. These 2 girls trying to come up with dresses that just didn't fit. They were awful. I think at the time I just sort of looked back and thought, well, we've been able to fudge it so far, but we certainly are going into a design realm here that requires technical construction, and this product has to fit, and I have no idea what I'm doing. So we put the call out for someone to join the team, and Amadio Colafella, who joined with us nearly 13 years ago, is still with us today and is our head of design. And
oh, wow.
I can attribute a great deal of our success and our learning and our brand that it is today because of the work that he has done with us and for us. And it's been a great partnership that certainly has taught me so much and, has got us to where we are now.
Yeah, well, it's so important. It's interesting because as beautiful as it is, not coming from that design background and being able to have that that freedom to do whatever you want, there's also the market that's pushing you as well. It seems to be all of a sudden it's people are like, yeah, we want more, where you kind of are sitting there going, okay, so what do I do now? Especially if you're, but it's great. So you've engaged. So it was Marco? Did you say Marco? Amadio, sorry. You engaged Amadio and he's completely transitioned your brand and created these beautiful silhouettes that we see now in the stores that are absolutely beautiful. And one of the things I do admire about Elk is your tailoring's exquisite, and your construction. My dad was a sewing machine mechanic for many, 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 many years and worked in Melbourne's manufacturing industry for many, many years until it all kind of went offshore in the late 80s, early 90s. And so I'm one of those people, I hate to admit this, I'm one of those people that will pick up something off the rack and will look at how it's been put together and go, yeah, nah, put it back. But I have to admit that a lot of Elk's product, or all of Elk's product, is absolutely beautifully made and constructed. So tell me about your design process, because obviously with each collection, it's seasonal collection, you have to come up with something new and inspiring. I do know you have your staples, the things that you have all the time in store as well, but when you're coming up with a new collection, like what inspires you? How do you go about that process?
I think the lovely thing about running an independent business is that actually we don't have to answer to anyone. And actually we've got total creative freedom. Every season the canvas is blank. And I think we've got this beautiful audience, as you said earlier, that actually spans across a very broad demographic, and that's certainly our advantage. But it is certainly a huge challenge for us because we have tried in the past to be everything for everybody, and have probably come full circle in the recent times of just actually saying we can't be something for everybody. And so what we've actually done very recently is actually just a bit of a recalibration of who our customer is and who we're designing for. And that certainly helps to inform the design process. We've got, from a creative point of view, no rules. And I think what we are inspired by, certainly we've got a very creative industry here in Melbourne and in Australia. And so we love to see what our peers are doing, but don't follow. Like to watch what's happening internationally and use that as inspiration, but certainly don't use it as a guide. And so we really go off silhouettes that have worked in the past, the ones we know that have been popular. We know our customer quite well, and we know that they love colour. We know that they love print. And so we have, usually at the start of a collection commences with a theme. And, we've got our current theme is ardent, which is the notion of being entirely passionate about a cause or entirely committed to a purpose. And I think that's translated through to each garment, so that every piece is not just a piece on a rack, but certainly there's a story behind it. So it's either the make that's made it, the pattern that's gone into it, the way that it was constructed, a lot about the material that it's made from, and it's reflective of our passion and our ardent commitment to making things that have got purpose and that provide opportunity for others, and that, at the end of it, look great and feel great to wear. And our size curve goes from a 6 to a 20. We have an open door policy that anybody who works through our doors is welcome and no judgment. And so the design process is inspired about, the creative process about a story or a cause, as it is about the customers that are actually going to wear it, because, there's no point in us making the product if it's not wearable.
That's right. And all your products are timeless too. I think you could have bought something 10 years ago and bought something today, and you can mix and match it together and they still look great.
Correct.
And that's one of the things that, a lot of people that I know that wear your product love is like, oh yeah, it's like they've got their staple pants or their staple shirts or what have you. And it's great. And I actually bumped into a girlfriend a couple of weeks ago, and I was actually telling her that I'm having you on the show. She's like, oh my God. She's like, apparently she buys this pant, and it's a staple pant that you make all the time. And she's like, have you bought these pants? I said, no. She said, I'm telling you now, they're the most comfortable pants. And she said, as soon as they come out, she's like, I'll buy a new pair. So that's a great testament to the product. And you know what? And I think that's also a big part of the success of your business as well, is the fact that you do understand your customer really, really well. And just for those young entrepreneur fashion designers that are kind of embarking on their own brand, how long did it take you to kind of, work out your customer and who they are? Because I guess from my perspective, like I said, I'm not in the fashion design industry, and I wouldn't even know where to start. How do you work out, well, okay, this is who they are, and so we're going to stick to this particular design or what have you? How long did it take you to work that out?
I think the context needs to be put in place that when we did start, it was a very different business market to be working in. So in the beginning, and still to a point now, everybody is our customer. We can't control them. We don't have any, opinion over who buys our product. That's, for everybody. And in the beginning, we really, we probably didn't know who that person was. We designed a lot for ourselves and our friends, and we designed what we like. I think today, though, we've got the ability to be able to read actual data around who the customer is, where they're coming from, what they're buying, what size they are, what they do and don't like, because we've got, tech in place and we've got software in place that helps us read that data. I think that what you can do is you can allow that data to make decisions for you, whereas actually what we need to always do is come back to gut instinct and always come back to the vision of that person who we want to appeal to, because we are otherwise do end up spreading ourselves too thinly and trying to become something for everybody. And it becomes really, I think we're in a, hand on heart, we're in a position at the moment which we feel like we've probably spread ourselves too thinly and have actually tried to be too much for everybody, and it has caused some brand confusion. And I've got a dress here that's embroidered and sparkly, and then I've got a pair of linen pants to wear to the beach. So who are we actually designing for? And I think we're in a it's really important as a young designer or a young business owner at any point in your journey to be able to step back and actually take a breath. How do we look from the outside? And does this messaging make sense? And does the intended audience, is that clear? There's no rhyme or reason sometimes for why a product will appeal to one person over the other, and sometimes we get it wrong and we think that something's going to be hit and it isn't, and conversely it can be the other way around. But I think that you start off, whatever it is that you're doing in business, fashion or otherwise, with a customer in mind. And I think that generally you always come back to that customer. They were the root cause for your business, or they were the purpose that you started with, and I think that invariably doesn't change. Certainly we change over time. I am 20 plus years older than I was when we started this business, and Adam is as well. And we have to be mindful not to age our product as we age as well, because that customer that I was 20 years ago hasn't changed for the purpose of Elk. But we certainly also do need to make sure that we can provide an opportunity for people like myself and older to be able to still buy into the brand. So it's a balancing act that's very difficult to meet.
And I'm assuming it is easy to get caught up trying to be something for everyone. I think it's very, especially for small business, and, you get a few bites on something that you weren't really anticipating. You think, I might go and try that. And before you know it, you lose yourself in all that. And I guess, with social media and all of that, and influencing and all of that in the background, it's very easy for young entrepreneurs to kind of keep swaying left and right and not quite figure that out. But you're 100% right. You need to almost go back to your gut or check in. I call it my check in time. It's like, you go back and you go, okay, why am I doing this again? And who am I doing this for? And it kind of anchors you back to where you need to be, and then kind of cut out the noise, if you want to call it noise. It's interesting, and it's really good advice for those embarking on this journey, or kind of feel a little bit confused and have kind of lost a bit of control of where everything's going. So you've been creating collections, and they're doing really, really well. How far along into your journey did you go, right, you know what, I'm going to turn up the notch on sustainability, and really go out there? Because I noticed on your report you've got in your supply chains, you've got tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, tier 4, and for a lot of those people listening, they've got no idea what that means. So how do you go? Because I know the fashion industry is synonymous with obviously cheap labour, and pollution and all that sort of stuff. So you've really broken it down in your report, which is fantastic. But obviously, people that don't understand it will be reading and going, what does this even mean? So just give us a rundown. How did that all transpire? When did you decide, you know what, I want everyone to know this is how we operate, they need to be able to see it, and this is what it is?
So part of running an ethical business and being close to your suppliers is challenging when half of them are overseas, or more than half of them are overseas. And so our commitment to doing as best we could within the supply chain was that we would actually go and see each of these suppliers twice a year. It didn't matter where they were or how difficult it was to get to them. And through that journey, that was something that we did from the very beginning. And then probably around 5 years after we started the business, we did one of our regular pilgrimages to the Philippines, into an area that was fairly hard to get to, and nobody else, certainly no tourist, ever went to. We'd been working with a supplier there for some time, and he was making us a fantastic product, and we had a really good working relationship with him, but it was integral for us to continue to go and meet with him. And over that time, there were things that we saw in his factory set up, and certainly not just in the Philippines, but all over the world, where, and remembering that we come from a very westernised, developed nation, and our standards of workplace and our expectations and opinions of workplace are certainly challenged when you go to places like that. So there's that cultural part of it that you have to bear in mind. But one of these trips, we went, and it was not long after there'd been a tropical cyclone go through the area, and unfortunately that part of his factory had collapsed, and no one was hurt, thankfully. But what we saw when we went there was quite incredible. And part of the foundations of the factory have been built on rubble, so waste from the factory production and, building waste from the local area had been used to construct the foundations of the walls of the factory.
Oh my gosh.
It was that's standard, so they were recycling waste, and they were using it to build new foundations and new structures, which again is very normal in that area. But certainly led to some fairly structural challenges. And we could see the foundations of this factory were built on some pretty sketchy materials, and so we really thought that that was a catalyst for us to actually ask some pretty tough questions and use it. We said, look, we've raised some questions with you before around the concerns we have around the uniforms that the staff are wearing, and safety masks, and there was some industry information that was available to us, time that we were able to share with him around, concerns around the inhalation of dusts and particles and things like that. And we trod a fairly gentle path, because we also respect this person and didn't want to jeopardise the relationship we had with him. But we knew at the time that we couldn't stand by and watch what he was doing without raising concerns, because we knew part of this. We were funding his business, and we were providing opportunities for his staff to, earn an income and put food on the table and educate their children. But what cost is that at?
That's what I was going to say. What's the cost of that? You're right.
Yeah, so that is exactly where ethics and supply chain transparency comes into it. Whoever, and for those who aren't familiar with the process, basically, whatever product it is that you would buy a car or a T-shirt or the oranges that you put in your fruit bowl. There are many, many hands that touch that product to get it to your table or to your wardrobe. And I think that if you look back through all of those hands that are involved in bringing that product to you, it's actually, in some cases, hundreds or thousands of people who are involved. And, it is our responsibility as business owners to ensure that right through that supply chain, all those hundreds or thousands of hands are in conditions and in facilities that are safe and provide them with fair and consistent work. It is a huge task. It is really challenging. And you think simply about the shirt that you're wearing and go, how many people were involved in making every component of that shirt, from the thread that it stitches the hems closed to the buttons, the labels that are in the back neck, the care label, the packaging that it came in, even the transport that got that shirt, the cotton to the Gina Miller, Weaver, Solar, right through to the end store. So it is massively complex, and I think that most brands will map their tier one supply chain. So tier one is the end, the finisher. So they will cut, sew, construct the garment, and then put it in the bag and send it off on the ship to go into the brand. Moving right back through the supply chain, you go right back to tier 4, which is the farm. So the cotton that material was, the cotton farm that material was grown on, or the factory potentially that if it was a synthetic material was made in, and then the chemicals that synthetic material was made from. So we have committed to map 100% of our supply chain. We've mapped 100% of our tier 1, most, if not all, of our tier 2, a great deal of our tier 3, and then a portion of our tier 4.
Wow, that's epic. That's epic in itself. Like, to
Correct.
be able to go all the way back there from the inception of obviously the fabric and how it's made and the materials used to make that. That's...
The reality of it is, though, is that, like, it's all very good and well to map it, but then what do you do about it? And I think that's really probably what I think consumers and certainly even a lot of brands, when they start on this journey, don't think about, like, what happens if you find something grossly, unethical at tier 4? How do you change that supply chain? A, because one, you have to as a responsible business owner, but two, to actually change the mindset or change the conditions in that tier 4 supply chain. Because in the reference that I gave to you, what started this whole process for us in the Philippines was, we worked with the supplier for quite some time, and we got to the point where we went, he's not going to change. And that was really sad, because we'd got to know his staff, we knew the children of the staff that worked for him, and we knew by walking away from him, that, which we ultimately did, that actually would
have been hard.
Livelihoods of some of those people was lost, and that great feeling of responsibility is something that I still live with today. But we couldn't, with his inability or unwillingness to change, we couldn't stand by and continue working with him, and knowing that we were potentially putting someone's health at jeopardy.
That's so hard. I mean, how do you even, it's hard to understand that mindset, I guess, being so westernized here in Australia and having protocol in everything that we do. It's really hard to understand that mindset, I guess, from a business perspective. For us, it's very simple, like, fix it and we can continue doing business. But for them, it's a completely different way of looking at it, and it would be hard, I guess, from your perspective, and even me just listening to it, going, oh my gosh, how do you can't really even get through to them, can you? In some instances.
I think in some instances there is that, as I said before, a real cultural issue. Very, very small example, but these people were polishing resin products, and the resin was non-toxic. We'd done all the research into that. It didn't actually pose a risk, but really it's not something you want to be breathing in. So we said, look, where are the face masks? We can provide them for you, and we think that they should be wearing them. And he said they won't wear them because they like to smoke while they're doing it, and they can't smoke and wear a mask at the same time. So provide them with all the masks, and they're just not going to wear them. So that's something that we don't smoke in the workplace here. There's all those things that just so foreign to us. But in these open air backyard sort of operations, that was just how they like to work, and they didn't really care about the health. Well, I don't know that they didn't care about the health consequences, but certainly they were something that they disregarded as not being important, and
it wasn't priority.
Wasn't a priority to them. So Yeah, look, the supply chain side of things is really complicated, and I think what our transparency reports are aimed at doing is actually being able to openly share with the public the fact that this is important for brands to know their supply chains, to trace them right back to farm. It is really, really hard, and that hopefully by sharing the journey that consumers can, I think, make more conscious decisions about the product they make and who they buy the product from, and to think about always the hundreds of hands that have actually gone into making that product. You know, we shouldn't be in a disposable mindset when others have worked very, very hard to grow a fibre and then, you know, make a product, and to buy something for $8 that just then is just discarded after a few wears. Like, it is just something that is, I find, very challenging.
Does that do your head in? It does my head in, I must admit. I tend to buy classic, whatever I buy. I mean, I'm a lot more conscious these days than I've ever been, obviously because of the work that I do, and I make it my business to know where things come from and what have you. And I know there's a lot of work to be done, and it's not something that's going to happen overnight, but it's really encouraging to see more and more Australian labels taking that initiative, and also now international labels taking that initiative. And I always say to people, you know what, I get it. If fast fashion is very tempting. It's, it's cheap, it's easy, and if you're a student and what have you. But you know what, buy intelligently is what I say to the young ones. Like, if you buy a white T-shirt, it's a white T-shirt. Perhaps invest in something that's made a little better. Have a look at where it's made and how it's made before you just go, and I don't want to name anyone, and just go and pay $8 for a T-shirt that's going to fall apart after 2 washes, and then what do you do with it? But I feel like people do want to know more and more. Certainly in our audience, and as you said before, our data shows that actually some of our most read articles are the ones on sustainability, particularly in the fashion industry, because people are interested, they do want to know. They're becoming more educated. This new generation that's coming through are becoming more educated on product. They want to know, and they want to be able to contribute to society better, and they want to make better choices. And I think that's very empowering. And I'm pretty sure that a lot of brands are taking that quite seriously now. I think 10 years ago it was the word sustainability was thrown around a bit, but I think now people are actually starting to go, okay, you know what, we do need to make a change here. We do need to do things a little bit differently, from recycling fabrics to, using even plastic bottles to create new fabrics, and really being mindful of where their products are getting made, and all the rest of it. So your supply chain has, and your transparency on your website's been going on for how many years now? 3 or 4 years, I think?
We've been doing the reports for nearly 5 years, but certainly the work prior to that had been going on for quite some time before. I think this was a really personal crusade that I sort of went on, and, as a business owner, trying to, wear every hat. The hat that I wanted to wear was the one around sustainability.
Well, you've done that well, really, really well. Congratulations.
Yeah, but I think as a consumer or a business owner or whoever, as a citizen of this world, I think once you open the door to knowledge, and once you open your mind to understanding the challenge that we have globally ahead of us, and open your heart to the urgency of the situation, that you can't close that door. And I realised pretty quickly, and particularly at the time as well, when I really did start looking into this, starting to travel, looking for alternative fabrics, starting to look for alternative makers. I was going to trade fairs in Paris and places like that and seeking out the sustainable, vendors. And I am not joking, you can take Jeff Shed here in Melbourne, which for those who are not in Victoria, of our big exhibition space, you'd have 6 of them, and I'm not joking, in a corner there might be 3 people.
Really?
And in the beginning, it was this total desperation to find alternatives, and total desperation to talk to someone who could educate me and explain, more, and to collaborate with. And those people just didn't exist. The wonderful thing has been, though, that very, very quickly, as science has proven to us that we don't have a lot of time left to try and tip the scale back on global emissions and our warming, that this topic and fashion has really borne the spotlight, I think, of this topic, which I think is absolutely necessary and right. But there are many other industries, and I don't want to point the finger either, who also consume fabric at the same rate and, have just as much responsibility. Fashion's taking the hit, but that's okay. Happy to lead the charge. I think in that time that, we do travel now and we see a lot more alternatives, consumer demand, science leading us to greater awareness, the movement that is global from, young to old is actually forcing fashion into a space that means that they have to be more aware, responsible, acknowledge their impact and actually accountable for their impact as well. And I think that's wonderful. And we do now, luckily, go to trade fairs all over the place, and we do see a much greater representation of alternatives than we used to. I think we have to be careful with this, this very real topic of greenwashing, though. And I think that doesn't just fall to brands; it also falls into the supply chain as well.
It does, yeah.
You can go to these trade fairs and they'll have a little green ticket on some of their fabrics, and you'll say, okay, what's this about? And I think to the uneducated designer or uneducated production person, they'd go, oh yeah, that's got a green tick, that should be fine. Whereas we don't rest on our laurels, and we actually really do inquire about, whether it's certified and where it's come from and, why has it got a green tick, So I think, greenwashing is real, and our transparency reports have been put in place in a great part to actually try and explain our position, our work, and, also bring up some real topics that are inherent to the industry at the moment and consumerism as a whole.
It's important. You're right. Greenwashing is a big one. I feel like there's a lot of brands jumping on that bandwagon, and I had, there were a few brands, again, I'm not naming anyone, that had gone on this whole sustainability. When we started digging a little deeper, I'm like, I don't know, I feel really that sustainable, but it's interesting. Look, it's a trend. Everyone's going, and you're right, it's not just the fashion industry, and I think the fashion industry has kind of taken all the brunt of the pollution and the sustainability factors, because of course I'm into interior design as well, and building and construction, so I know there's a lot that goes on there as well. That's really hard as well, to try and find materials and that you can construct things that are ethical, that come from ethical factories and whatnot. And it's a challenge across many industries. But you know what? I think the silver lining is more and more people are starting to look for alternatives. We do have more choice. As you said earlier, from 10 years ago, there's a lot more choice, and people are actively going out there saying, hey, this is a new product, it's made from this, and this is our factory, and this is where you can go, which is fantastic, and really, really encouraging. So in terms of your future now, I want to kind of leap ahead a little bit. Like, what have been, well, actually, no, I'm going to ask you first of all, what have been your highlights over your journey in the last almost 20 years with Elk?
Gosh, there's been so many. And I think that, one of our greatest achievements has been just seeing our team grow. I think that's been wonderful. And certainly to the point now we have nearly 100 staff, and those opportunities are just growing, and I can't wait to see where that goes and how many more people we can come on board, and providing a great workplace for them, and certainly the influence that we have on their personal mindsets away from work around sustainability and the way that they live their lives. I think that's been a real boon. We moved into a new office recently in a fantastic old sawtooth New York style warehouse. It was
nice.
A factory, and I think moving into that space was actually a great celebration of years of never having purpose-built spaces and finally being a grown-up office. That's certainly a highlight. There's been things along the way, like winning awards, the Fashion Laureate of the Year for the inaugural Sustainability Award for the Australian fashion industry. That was great. Every time you see someone walking down the street wearing your product, and that you stop and look at them before you even realise that they're wearing something that you've designed. I mean, isn't that just what it's all about?
Yeah.
Actually, why make product if it can't be worn? And as I said earlier, and it's there's nothing better than seeing someone proudly walk down the street wearing something you've made. And that many times it's actually happened overseas too, where invariably with an Australian travelling, or, you know, we do have many stockists overseas as well, you know, being in New York or being in places that you go, oh, we made that. Or, you know, the latest Sex and the City episodes, you know, with one of your products on there as well. So, you know, there's little wins along the way.
Oh, that's so good.
And the big wins, you know, and very public wins along with the small wins as well. You know, I think 2 weeks ago we welcomed 10,000 bees into hives in our garden at the office. And, you know, how great's that?
So that's fantastic. 10,000 bees. Wow, that's fantastic. So there'll be elk honey.
Elk honey's coming.
Elk honey's coming. I love it.
I don't think we'll be able to make enough to sell it, but I think certainly, you know, it's little wins like that, you know, Adam and I have never been about, you know, big brash business. We are quietly achieving things at our own pace and, you know, hopefully having a positive impact along the way. And that's the journey that we've been on. That's the one that we've stuck to for 20 years, the one that we're going to continue on for the future.
What strikes me about having this conversation with you, Marnie, is how authentic you are and how your authenticity is like right through from who you are as an individual and right through your brand and your staff and everything. And it's so refreshing and nice to see that, you know, and I'm sure Adam's, you know, very similar too. Now, you guys have been working together, husband and wife. How's that as a business partner? I work with my husband, so I'm really interested to see how you're going. We've been in business for over 20 years as well, so we're kind of used to each other. But tell me about that. How does that work out for you guys? Do you have your moments?
I think we had our moments more so when we were in that real growth phase, you know. But pretty early on, we realised that we had to separate out our strengths. We knew each other were good at, and which we weren't good at. And I certainly know that, you know, he has a mind for and memory for logistics and, you know, all things finance, which I have, you know, I fall asleep at the even the idea of it. And, you know, I think both of us still, though, have a very well-rounded perspective on business. Again, I said we're both, you know, have born and bred in small businesses and have sat around the dinner table listening to our parents talk about finance and then people and then, you know, marketing and, you know, the whole gamut of what it takes to run a business. So we both understand what it takes. We both understand the pressures that each other are under. And I think that is what makes it work. We don't try and tell each other what to do or how to suck eggs. We just have our jobs and we get on with it. And I think that, you know, he is a creative person and needs to find that outside of the business. And so we also allow each other the time to be able to, outside of work, to be able to pursue the aspects of their personality that they don't get in the workplace. And we're so busy we hardly see each other, so that's probably what makes it work as well.
I think so too. People often say the same thing to me. It's honestly, it's like I hardly see Rob. When we're at work, like you said, we're the same. We kind of know what we're both good at, and we don't intertwine. And I think there's an element of trust, knowing that, yeah, you know what, I don't need to think about that. He's got that bit. I don't need to think about that. She's got that bit, and it kind of it works. We have our moments, of course, but because he's got an architectural background, so and I've got interior design background. After I did hairdressing, I went back to school and did interior design. So sometimes we clash on he's always about design, I'm always about function, and so this is where we sometimes we kind of like we have to meet in the middle and call it a truce. But yeah. But what's on the cards moving forward? What's on the cards for Elk? Like, what does the next 5 years look like for you guys?
We are just about to enter the queue for our BCorp certification, which was ready pretty much before COVID, and then, you know, the old COVID hit and disrupted plans for most businesses. But so BCorp certification is the next big thing on our list, and we've got, you know, a real desire to also push forward through retail, expanding our brand awareness. So we've got a lot of work to do on that side of things. We've just opened 2 new stores, one in South Yarra and one in Brighton, both in really prestigious locations amongst other great brands. Yeah,
I saw the one in Brighton the other day, actually. I was like, oh, Elk's moved here. So that's really, really fun. So you're kind of at the start of Church Street.
Correct. We're on Church Street in Brighton. And I think that, again, for those outside of Melbourne, finding locations for us south of the river, we're very north of the river, is important for us to be able to increase our brand knowledge, because somewhat frustratingly, after 20 years, some people still don't know about us. So we know that we've got a lot of work to do in that brand recognition space. We're getting a lot of pressure to move stores up to Sydney or into New South Wales. So we've got plans for the retail footprint to expand, which is exciting. And the stores that we do have currently, that the older stores, are all going to be renovated and brought up to speed with our new designs. And there's lots of sustainable elements in those stores, which are exciting. And lots of we've worked with an independent glass blowing artist from Melbourne, Mark Douglas, and he's made light fittings for us. So there's lots of exciting retail space, which is good. And then the other thing is we've got a much delayed launch of our Renew program. So, talking about, our conversation earlier around, customers being able to afford product or, wanting to buy more sustainably, we have quite a store of products that have either come back to us or that have even myself and staff that have been wearing things and things that are pre-loved and still in great condition that we've renovated and we're going to put back out there in the space under our Renew program. So part of our goals for circularity to increase in the business and, give customers an alternative, myself included. I think, outside of Elk, I don't buy much new, certainly for my kids. That giving customers an alternative to buy a product that has almost no impact beyond the renovation of that product and its end of life when it is finally, too bad to be worn, giving them an alternative to buy something that's not new, which is incredibly important for us. So that hopefully will go into stores, into our Preston store in the next month, and then that'll roll out to a full take-back program. So we've committed to take anything back from any time out of our last 20 years that we've made, and if we can renovate it and resell it, or if we can, if it's got to the point where it can't be reworn or renovated, that we will recycle it appropriately. So working with partners such as apparel and others to actually find ways of actually dealing with that waste.
That's important. I know there's a new technology that's come out in the denim industry where they kind of mince up the denim and then recreate a new fabric. Would you ever consider doing something that with products that, you can't upcycle or recycle?
So actually it's interesting because products like denim can be recycled into new fabric, but actually the fibres are really short, so they're not great to be rewoven. So they're perfect like carpet underlays or insulation for roofs. Denim's actually a great product. It can be recycled again and again. For mixed materials, it's a little harder, and actually there isn't really an industry here in Australia that is available to recycle products. Apparel is, we went and had a look at their facility a month or so ago to see what they were doing. They're currently the best solution for taking and triaging and then moving on that product appropriately to the right recycling process. But it's still in its infancy, that technology. And, we're seeing an increasing amount of recycled pre-consumer or post-consumer recycled materials coming into the market, but they are not incredibly available, and they're actually, a little limiting from a design point of view. But yeah, certainly. Look, I mean, we have got open dialogue with apparel and other other providers to actually try and work through solutions. But I think that your earlier point about our product being made well, the best thing you can do is wear what's already in your wardrobe.
100%,
that's the most sustainable thing you can do. And so our focus is very much on quality, right from construction through to material, so that that product can remain on your back for as long as possible. And then when it doesn't, you can charity partners are a great source for moving on, giving product another life. The resale market is huge, and so part of our Renew program is not only to sell what we've already got in our stock, but take back whatever people are finished with. And then actually also we're looking into some software at the moment which we can hopefully integrate on our own website, where consumers can actually manage their own resale program. So there's a lot of elk being resold already on eBay and other.
And Aerobe, I think, as well. Aerobe's a new one that just started, I think, last year from memory.
Yeah, there's many options
heaps now. Yeah.
Owning our own story and looking for software that can provide customers with multiple solutions is the key, because I think when you've finished wearing a garment, the last thing that we want to do is see it in landfill. That's
No. I've never thrown. I get really cross when I see people discard, whether it's linen, bed linen or clothing in rubbish bins. It literally really, really makes me upset, because I just think, come on, it's not that hard to drop it. There's so many facilities, and like you said, there's so many partners. There's great partners around now that will take clothing for women that are struggling, that want to get back into the workforce. There's clothing for kids. There's so many really great charities that you can donate to. It shouldn't end up in the bin at all.
I think what's the public though need to be educated. And I think that actually the solutions are really challenging. What do I do? I mean, I'm the same. I walk through my streets and rubbish collection day and nearly cry at some of the stuff I see popping out of the bins. But, I think the public are confused about, how they dispose of or recycle, textiles particularly. And, that's actually on government to actually help provide those solutions. So, when something is at the end of its life and it really can't be worn again, and bed sheets are a great one, what do you do with them? And
I give them to my dad for drop sheets when he's painting. He loves it.
Yeah, that's right. But once your dad's got paint all over them, then what happens to them?
Oh, my dad's a hoarder. He'll keep them forever and ever.
Yeah.
Create a tent for the kids.
Yeah, one day when you clean out your dad's shed, and I think that
but you're right. You're 100% right. Like, what do you do? What do you do? What do you do with these things that we don't have any use for anymore? I'd like to see a few more recycling plantations in Australia where they can. There was an Indian doctor that was environmentalist that was doing some great work on recycling glass and plastics and recreating them into tiles. And I'd love to see some more of that here in Australia, where, materials that we can't use, or synthetic materials that we can't use again, why can't we mix them with other polymers and create, things that we can build from, or, tables and chairs? Like, surely there has to be a way to do that.
It's coming. Yeah, it's coming. It just takes investment. I mean, this technology is expensive. It also needs to have industry collaboration. So, whoever can come up with a solution in this space will be, king really, and it will be a fantastic business opportunity. It is a fantastic business opportunity, but it requires, I think, collaboration from industry and collaboration from government as well.
Yeah, 100%.
Some countries have got it, are far ahead of what we are doing in Australia, and I think that, I'm in the business of selling product. I'm fully aware of that, but I'm also in the business of responsible consumption. So, I will say to somebody, if you can buy something secondhand, buy it. Like, if you don't really need that white T-shirt, then don't buy it. But when your jeans have completely fallen apart and you've ripped the knees out and all this, and you do need a new pair of jeans, then we're going to provide you with an option that's a lot better than a lot of them are out there. And we're not alone in this journey. I mean, there's other brands also doing great things, and some things much better than what we're doing it as well. We're looking at things from a holistic point of view, though, trying to find ways of making better product and run our business better, and then actually influencing our manufacturers in tiers 1 to 4 to run things better as well, putting solar panels on their roofs or reducing their water consumption or whatever it is. It's about responsible business from the core right through to the product. And I think we can do as much as we can do, and we can be as pure and authentic about our journey as we want to be. But we are living in a society which creates waste, and we don't have the resources, the skills, the expertise, or the knowledge to actually create those solutions at the end of life. And I think that that's where our involvement with other industry partners, with our peers, and certainly the need for government intervention or assistance is massive. And, without government providing revenue or investment in innovation, I think we'll never get there. We'll just continue to consume and fill up those holes in the ground.
Well said, 100%. I think the government needs to intervene or needs to support and help even with what you're planning to do over the next 5 years is take back product and on sell it and what have you, even being able to kind of give you a tax break on that will go towards, you know, a recycling, you know, premises and what have you. So I think it's important, but, you know, look, fingers crossed, you know, we never know. You know, people like yourself and, you know, obviously me publishing and what have you will, you know, will be heard, and, you know, things will start to kind of move in the right direction, and they are slowly. But yeah, you know, I guess this will be another push towards helping not only consumers realize, hey, we don't need all these things, or let's shop smarter. Let's think of ways of how we can dispose of what we're not using anymore that's going to be in line with not only our own values, but what's going to help the, you know, the future for the environment and the future for our kids as well. And I think also when you said you had children, and so have I, and that's one of the things that, you know, we're all kind of moving in that direction, is what are we going to leave our children? And we want to make sure that we leave our children with an environment that's safe and healthy, and, you know, they can still have all these things that we're enjoying right now. On a closing note, I guess, you know, being in the fashion business for nearly 20 years, what advice would you impart on new fashion designers coming through the ropes? Because it's changed so much over the 20 years, I've had privilege to talk to you about over this last hour. There's, you know, so many things to think about these days, especially if you want to enter that whole ethical, sustainable kind of aspect of things. What advice would you give any young designer out there looking to start their own label?
This is a really hard one, because I feel like I started our business at a very different time. But, I mean, we are still working in the current market. And I think that stay true to your cause and stay true to your purpose, because, you know, that passion and that, you know, enthusiasm that you have when you start needs to remain there all the way through, because you'll get knocked and you'll get told no, and you'll get pushback along the way. But I don't think that anybody takes risk like you do when you start a business without being confident about what it is that you're wanting to do, and, you know, to be able to step back and remind yourself that you know, the idea was a great idea, and that you have to find your niche, you have to find your customer, and work bloody hard, you know. And I think also, you know, I don't want to sound like a nanny here, but, you know, we do have a generation with an insatiable appetite for immediate gratification. And I think that the reality of business is, again, whatever it is that you're doing, it takes time, and you have to be prepared to have $20 in your pocket for a long time. And the realities of it are that still to this day, 20 plus years on, Adam and I take a wage now, which is great, but everything else is ploughed straight back into the business. We invest back into this business for the future, and we have plans, and we have our old business plan that we did in 2003 and look back on and laugh at. But our business plan has evolved, and our vision has been bigger than just product. You know, you're running a business here. You're not just running a product. So, you know, if you're starting out in the fashion industry, you know, do a business plan, and, you know, figure out where you want to head and what you want to look at in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 10 years' time. Like, where are you going with this? Because without a destination, the journey becomes a bit misguided.
Yeah. Well, you know, when you're an archer and you shoot an arrow, you need to know your bullseye. Otherwise, you'd just be shooting everywhere. So it's important. Your business plan is super, super important. And you know what you said. You know what you said earlier about, you know, the generation coming. You're right. They're looking for that instant gratification, that instant success, and it does take a long time, and it does take a lot of sacrifice, and it does take a lot of grit, if you like, to kind of and making some tough choices, you know, because it's easy to kind of to go down the road of, oh yeah, you know what, I'll just do this, but kind of taking a step back and going, no, I'm going to stick to my morals, I'm going to stick to my values, and this is what I want, and I'm going to make a sacrifice for this. Sorry, I'm a bit nasally. it's tough, and nothing happens overnight. Nothing happens overnight. What an amazing success! I mean, your whole ethos, your whole entire business and what it's built on is an incredible success. You and Adam must be so proud, and it's so great to have a label like Elk Australian that represents everything that's good in design, everything that's wholesome in sustainability, and everything that's not only good for the environment but good for humans as well. And I mean, congratulations to both of you. It's an epic brand, and I'm super stoked to have you on the show and being so open and honest with me about your entire journey. I think there's so many great little pointers in there, and I think just people listening to the ebbs and flows and of how you started and how involved you get in every part of the process is important, especially today. I think that's it. We're going to have all your details on our website and on the YouTube channel, and the Instagram and all the rest of it.
Yep, thanks for having me.
You're welcome. Connect with us on Instagram, where we share additional tips, quotes, and behind-the-scenes content. It's a great way to interact with us. So jump online, go to Casper Magazine on Instagram and follow us and tell us what you think. Ciao for now.